thought of
anyway.
just having like a separate ITC like BCP account for when I want to try weird shit instead
Yeah,
of having
I've
to like
thought about it
cost
too,
myself
having a
300
Smurf
yellow
account.
for it.
Smurf account
Not a bad
for
idea.
40k. All right, well
The
we
Really good idea.
GTs with triple Baneblade list that I've done that same thing for. Yeah.
Wesley 2.0. Nice, cool. So
Yeah.
we are live, everyone, and welcome everyone to this new episode. We're going to be trying something new today. This is going to be a round table on the new Bridgehead something detachment, the new Scion detachment. I'm joined here by three of my favorite people in the Warhammer community. Right above me, at least on my screen, we have Paul Clifton coming in. This is the guy who taught me how to play Rough Riders and is an absolute psychopath with his melee list. He's been having a lot of fun with like another Scion list recently. So, Clifton, how are you doing today?
Nice to meet you guys. Yeah, pretty good. In the middle of the working day, so sneaked off somewhere. But you've got me to yourselves for the next hour.
Nice. I see you got
But
the
yeah,
accounting
yeah,
strategy
loving
going.
loving the science at the moment. Say again.
I see you got the accounting strategy right up next to you, so it looks like it's going to be a good time.
It's not my classroom. I'm a maths teacher, not a business teacher.
Nice. All
Yeah,
right. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. The new scions lists are looking juicy, but the melee list's dead, so I can't be playing that anymore.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, up in the top right, we have the best player in Atlanta who was not at the WCW, and a Lehman Russ specialist and certified Bulgren and Dorn hater, David Purcell, coming in. How you doing today, David?
I'm good, exhausted. Had a kid who was born actually the day after Worlds, so that's a big part of why I wasn't there. So I am exhausted
Congratulations.
and have not been playing as many games as I should have been, but I did get a couple in today, so hopefully can give at least some thoughts.
Nice. And then, of course, the person who I am recently gone on record as saying who I think might have the single best list for the upcoming meta, depending on how the rest of Grotmas goes, we have Wesley, aka Nemo St. Hines, coming in off of a 7-1 performance at the WCW. And from what I can tell, he's also been very excited about this new detachment because he said his list got even better than the one he took to the World Championships. How you doing today, Nemo?
Good. Good. I'm also in Team Tired, but it's for much worse reasons. I've played 12 games of the new detachment so far,
Wow,
and
that
it's been out for
Wow.
3 days.
Huge.
See, I thought I was already ahead of
Mercenary
the curve.
TGS.
I've got like 3
Yeah,
games. I played
both.
one today. I played 2 at a Teams RTT where I like threw random stuff in a box. Like that's gonna be good enough. But
Yeah,
anyway.
because I teach at university, and finals have already happened. So
Ah, so you're on winter
I'm
break.
I'm fully picked my own hours for the next month.
That's pretty exciting. Well,
Yeah.
with that, gentlemen, we have a new Bridgehead detachment to talk about today. And so I have a couple of questions in mind, but I kind of want to get some opening thoughts in general on how we feel about the new Bridgehead Strike detachment because generally the consensus seems to be that it's been pretty strong. Wesley, we can go ahead and start with you. What are you feeling about this detachment?
Um, so I mean, starting with the initial analysis of like infantry guard, it's like almost strictly an upgrade. Reinforcements is gone, which is fine. I mean, it's not something you use a whole. I mean, you use it like when it shows up, right? But it's not usually games swapping.
Hmm.
The matchups you're winning, you win more. The matchups you're losing, you're able to usually get another 5 points out of it, which is good. But like the stuff in here is a lot juicier, right? There's a lot more to work with, and there's a lot more like responsiveness to what people are doing, right? There's a lot more being like, hey, I can do this, I can do that. And usually, when you're doing combined regiment with, say, infantry guard, it is just a linear, I'm going to slowly just walk forward and bleed you out on resources. And this detachment's really good at being able to pivot its game plan if you start, say, losing a flank, if you start needing to address problems that you don't currently have the resources to solve on one side. And so I think at the most bare bones level, it's going to be a lot easier to turn losing games into winning games with this list.
David, Clifton, anything to add?
So from teams, it's definitely an entirely different like slot in your team from combined regiment. In teams combined regiment, you're trying to take the most open board you can find, trying to just kill people out in the open, keep them off objectives. And now you're more like, I'm going to play for the 12, and if you give me the opportunity to 20 you, I'll take it. Whereas with combined regiment, you're just hammering home 20s. So a lot less of a ceiling. But if they're not prepared for it, if they don't have the shots to kill 200 people, they just lose on the spot. So definitely an interesting pairings opportunity in teams.
What are you thinking over there, Clifton? Because I know you've been fairly teams focused and you play pretty much exclusively on WTC these days.
Only WTC. That's something I've got to say from the get-go. Anything I put forward is all totally WTC based. So what I'm saying is not advice for GW to run at all. I agree pretty much completely with what Nemo and David just said. But one thing I would say is when running a melee list, because you got the charge as well, it was easy to pivot from one side to the other. So that was probably the only guard list where it was easy to pivot from one focus to another side of the board quite easily, because you've got the charge as well as your move and speed of Rip Riders. That kind of list is dead now, so it's nice to still have a list where you can pivot from one side to the other, where that would have been impossible now that melee guard is dead. And the stratagems that Nemo was talking about, it's just so much better. What was guard stratagems before, aside from reinforcements and inspired command, right? It was grenades, it was tank shock, it was rapid ingress with watch.
Yeah.
All core stratagems.
And Fields of
So
Fire, like
that's
when
what
you needed to dig something out of like AOC and cover with like a 2+, you're like, okay, full Fields of Fire now because we need to at least put them on a 4-up. But yeah, absolutely, we didn't have a lot of good stratagems. So let's go ahead and before we go into like the actual like breakdown of what the enhancements and stratagems and how you think these could be used, let's go ahead and talk about one of the biggest questions people have been asking is I only have 10, 20, 30 Scions. Coming right back to you, Clifton, what do you think is the least number of Scions you can play in this detachment and still make it worthwhile?
to be fair, I was going top end with it rather than bottom
I,
end.
I agree. I think it's better the more you have, but like for people who are not as deep of a collector
Who
as some of us.
don't have the same amount. I would say, looking at that, I would say you're looking at 30, aren't you? Really, right? Because after that point, it's why aren't you playing combined regiment? You losing lethals is quite big, right? But I think the advantages of this list, I keep pointing that way because I've got it in this. But the advantages of that list is that they outweigh the lethal hits if you've got enough bodies that are being able to take advantage of those new abilities, right? If you don't have enough bodies, then you're probably losing a lot more through the sheer amount of lethal hits you lose. Like say just your Dawns, for example, your multi-melt is not lethal in 6 anymore, right? Your tank, your normal Lehman Russ, right, with its reroll hits was great when it was lethal in on 6s. That's not so good anymore. So you've got to take enough bodies. I'd say 30. I'd say.
Yeah. What about you guys, David, Wesley? Do you think it's like higher, lower? Do you think you can get away with like 25? Higher?
I think if you're playing under 45, what are you doing? Like you could just take a list designed for this new detachment with 30 Scions and write combined regiment over the top of it, and you've made it 10% better minimum. Like you're just getting so much more with lethals, with reinforcement, because that is like the only other way you have of recycling Scions after you drop them the one time. So yeah, I would say 45, partially just to create conflict, and partially because I think I'm right.
We love the hot takes. Nemo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the for sure correct answer is less than 30 is just objectively wrong. I think 45 is leaning more towards correct, but like less than 30 is yes objectively incorrect. Because the whole argument we just made earlier was combined regiment has dead stratagems. It's bad in several areas depending on your list, right? No one's using +1 to indirect. No one's using like suppression fire, whatever it's called, for Vox casters.
Sometimes it's Krieg CP.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and
the say, it's half a CP and also do whatever else it does.
Yeah, but it's the same issue, right? The second you're running 20, 15 Scions, you have 2 dead stratagems, right? Like you're going to use them maybe once or twice if you have the CP, but like the second that unit's dead, you're now a 4 stratagem army, right? And it's just objectively not correct. That being said, I think if we're talking infantry guard, like 130 plus bodies, I think 45 is the minimum. I agree with David in that regard, because again, you need to have a tool that can hammer into your opponent. And Scions are the only thing infantry-wise that does that consistently. Like Caster can do it well, but they're not consistent, right? They're a much lower shot count. Same thing with Aquilons. They do it well, lower shot count, lower AP. I think if you are splashing tanks, like a lot of people have been considering triple tank commander, I think you can get away with 30 for sure, right? Because you have other tools to fill the role of those Scions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first RTT I played at, again, just like throwing stuff in a box. Like, I had 3 tank commanders and 2 units of 15 and then like 1 unit of 5. And I felt like it was fine, but I do generally agree. I think you would want more. I think the minimum is 40, personally, because I think you put 10 of them in a Taurox Prime. Right? Like,
Taken,
yeah.
I'm a Taurox
So this
Prime
is some what
hater, but
ifs.
that may come up later.
some what ifs, but if you'd taken the list you brought to that event and you just did what I said, like wrote combined regiment on top of it, would you have made a better list and like played better?
It would have been close. It would have been really close, to be honest.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Tank commanders losing lethals is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so huge.
Cool.
Massive.
So with that out of the way, so all
Just
the new players.
Multi-melters across the board losing lethals is like, out of all our weapons, multi-melters losing lethals is huge, especially for people with 5 tanks, because they really can spike. Everything losing is bad, but multi-melters in particular with strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, like infantry guard, you couldn't care less, right? Because it's always like yeah, I lose lethals, but also I have like 99% chance to kill any infantry model I shoot, right?
Yeah.
But like the tanks just hate it. It's yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's go ahead and talk about like what is actually in this detachment. So we can start with like the actual detachment rules. So we've lost the lethal hits of the Born Soldiers. And David, I'm gonna come to you first. We have only the best. Each time an Astra Militarum infantry model from your army makes a range attack, we roll a hit roll of 1. This one feels odd to me, considering it is a Scion detachment who do that anyway.
Yeah, that's weird. Seems like they haven't just like fixed the data sheet yet. It's gonna change or something, because why else would you do this? But I don't know. Other than that, like it makes your Kasserkin better. It works on Gonskos, which is funny. Maybe Rattlings become good enough,
You
but
know,
yeah, it's a weird rule to have in the army that already rerolls everything if you're doing it the way they want.
I have a crackpot theory that 6 Ogren tested as being super broken with this rule beforehand, and that's why they went up.
That's
Like,
That's why we lost the ability to issue Mia orders.
yeah,
exactly.
true. Could you imagine? They're rerolling 1s, hitting on 3s. It's just a lot of shots. But the next one, we can go right into it, and this is the most interesting one. Clifton, each time a military tempestuous model from your army makes a range attack in a turn which was set up on the battlefield from reserves or disembarked from transport, add 1 to the wound roll. This is like the core of this detachment.
Huge. It's huge, and it's why I want to go top end with Scions, because that is absolutely massive. Like +1 to wound on the amount of plasma shots you're getting out, plus the amount of shots when you're looking into vehicles and monsters is brilliant, because you're going from wounding on 5s to wounding on 4s, which is great difference, especially with the AP that those weapons have. Then when you're looking at lower toughness values, you're looking at your melters wounding on 2s now, maybe against your T5 elites. You're looking at your lasguns wounding your T4s on 4-ups or wounding your T3s on 3-ups. You know, these are huge breakpoints for the basic guns as well. You know, and hotshot polygons. It's just perfect for Scions.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, and
Dread Knights getting wounded on 2s with Melta is pretty hilarious also.
it's very fun. I'll come right back to you here, Nemo. The last part of the detachment is if a military tempestuous officer model is your warlord, units from your army or tempestuous scions gain battle line, and if they're not battle shocked, they get +1 OC. Now, to me, this reads like a Codex pre-rule saying that this is going to be the only detachment that we're likely going to be able to get tempestuous scion battle line going forward, like when the Codex hits. But I'm actually curious what your thoughts are on getting the +1 OC by default into the Scions, because you used a lot more of them than most people will.
Yeah, I was playing 75 since last December. I pivoted to 45 in June, for the longest time. The OC is not as relevant. I mean, without access to Inspired Command, it will be a bit more relevant for sure. if I was gonna say on my initial read through of this, there's this annoying issue that like the Prime and the like command squad Scions don't actually gain the OC, which is really weird. Um, because the Tempestus Scion models are not part of a Tempestus Scion unit, and you have to be both a Tempestus Scion unit and a Tempestus Scion model, which is annoying. The much more important part is the battle line part for sure. It's really funny, like especially at WCW, just being like, yeah, my 30 Scions are going to cleanse and shoot you to death because it's stalwarts. Sorry. Um, it's weird how relevant things like stalwarts, rapid escalation, right? Turn one deep strike,
Yeah,
is that it? Yeah, yeah.
and then swift action. Yeah.
Yeah, and like smoke and mirrors, it's an extra drop. You get +1 drop on that game, right? It's all very good interactions to have battle line, especially with uh I always forget its name. Shatter Cohesion? No, it's not Shatter Cohesion. Unbroken Wall. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever, whichever one it is, the one to get battle line in their backline.
I think it's
It's very
war of
good there.
attrition or something weird. But yeah,
Yeah, I know the names of the four. I never know which one's
it's the one you get the battle line in the back line, and yeah, look
yeah.
at
When
Clifton.
when it comes to that secret mission, the one big loss is reinforcements because it was almost guaranteed by turn 5 when the opponents hardly got anything left. If you used reinforcements on 5 or 10 Scions, it was almost a guaranteed 20 points
You can
on
now do
your.
the same thing with just the pickup strat. You just like grab a little 5-man and you can control it a little easier. You don't have to like try and purposely get them killed so you can set this up later. You can just say these 5 go up, they'll come back later.
The timing also works where you can still pick them up rapid ingress if you're top a turn.
Yeah.
Yes, you can rapid ingress to get the move in still, can't you?
Yeah. Its strat reserves doesn't specify they have to come down next turn, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the enhancements real quick. I'm going to go over these real quick, and I'm kind of going to come to you first, Clifton, and just kind of get your thoughts on which ones you think are worth taking. So we have Bombast, Class Vox Ray for 25 points. You put it on a Scion officer, and then you give 3 orders to different units. It has to be the same order to 3 different units. We have Priority Drop Beacon, Turn 1 Deep Strike. Shroud Projector, cannot be Overwatch, and Advanced Augury for 15 points. Put it on any infantry officer, doesn't need to be Tempestus, and then you redeploy 3 regiment armies from your army, and you can put them into strategic reserves. We could allow you to null deploy. Give me, which one of these do you think are actually good?
2 auto taking every single time, and that's going to be because I'm talking about mass Scion here, right? Shroud Projector without a shadow of a doubt. It's the amount of times where I can't put a Scion brick down because it's going to get overwatched is crazy, right? It's not every game, but it's a fair few amount of games, and it swings things because then you got to put them so far back. Right? 15 points for that, beautiful. And then the other one I'd say Bombast Class Fox Array, because being able to get front rank fire, second rank fire, and take aim on your Scions is brilliant. But before you do that, you can put out 3 moves to 3 units of Catachan, for example, in turn 1, then pick up the unit, then bring them down, bang, 3 units of Scions now with, 2 units with 2 orders and 1 unit with 1. It's beautiful. I'd say priority drop beacon on WTC. It's hard to get angles on your opponent. Maybe you could with the 6-inch drop, but it's hard to get angles on your opponent turn 1. So it could work, and it threatens, like you said in your video. I watched that yesterday. It makes your opponent deploy a bit more defensively, maybe. But it's a lot of points for something that you're probably only going to be using now and again. And then the advanced augury. It's all right. It's nice. It means you don't have to set cell with redeploys. But how often are we redeploying?
Eh.
Oh, yeah.
David, you look like you had
An
something to
interesting
add.
conflict. Yeah, I'm gonna advocate for the 2 that he doesn't like. The redeploy one, it's just funny because if you put that in Lord Solar in, you can redeploy 6 units and just do a whole second deployment phase. You shouldn't, but you can, and it's very funny. The one I actually advocate for is priority drop, the come in turn 1, because one of the biggest issues I notice when playing these style lists is if you get a bunch of Scions off the board turn 1, you go second, your opponent gets 2 full rounds of doing whatever they want until Scions come in, and that just leaves you in such an awkward spot. So being able to drop a first unit in, and also if you go second, pick up a unit off the board, have the ones that started off come in, that gives you like actual positioning so that a really aggressive list like World Eaters or something can't just take the whole board before you get to do anything. So depending on your list, I think priority can be worth it. Also, don't just default take 3 orders because a lot of lists just can't spend 3 orders. Like if you're just playing those 45 Scions as 3 guys with leaders and then tanks, what do you need the 3 extra orders for? So like don't just auto take it without looking.
Yeah, you absolutely want it if you're going mass scions or mass infantry. Like it's not one that you want to be taking if you like you say if you're only taking 30, 45 scions. I see your point about priority drop beacon. And like you said, it is dependent on the list. If you've got a lot of scout and other units pushing up to prevent that happening, but if you don't have those units, yeah, you've made a very good point there about.
Yeah. It sounds like then, Clifton, you are still very much an apologist for Catachan, even going up 10 points.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think 65 points is ridiculous, but having the ability to just say to world eaters, "Here's a Congo line, you can't get past it for a turn," or just putting them out and hiding behind obscuring to force shooting lists to get wide angles and go where they don't want to go, or just the sheer ability to early on primary deny is great. 65 points too much, but I still think 3 units of them is well is it's money.
Yeah. Wesley, Nemo, what would you like to add here?
I think the big thing with bombast, it's just differing from being auto take versus situational. Um, Against things not on objectives. So, admittedly, if your plan is to use Scions not on units on objective, right? Being able to double order take aim for string fire is like objectively amazing. Yeah, if you're not full hit rerolls, right? And so I think the bombast, if you are 3 Scion units, even if that is all your infantry, probably forces auto take. Um, just because you don't have to run Gaunt's Ghosts. If you're running both, you can drop the Ghosts obviously, which is a good place to be in. It frees up 85 points in the list. That being said, Bombast plus Ghosts is 7 orders, right? Or sorry, three primes. Make the 5 orders. Gaunt's Ghost for 2 more 7. Allows you to triple order all 3 squads and still have a squad swap for move to an offensive order, which is a nice spot to be in. It's just objectively amazing in my opinion. You also allows you to do some weirder things with having a lack of access to orders on turn 1 because you get to have one squad that starts on the table and be a triple ordering squad, which leads for me to also be not an advocate for drop beacon. My rule of thumb usually is if an army moves 15 plus inches turn 1 and is a melee army, I throw one Scion squad on the table, at least with like infantry guard, because I again respecting your opponent getting top of turn. But the up and down strat solves that exact same issue. If your opponent runs at you turn 1, just pick up the Scion squad that's on the table and have them be the solution. And so that issue isn't a huge issue for me. But the other thing that is I don't see much use cases outside of needing a second squad turn 1. And I don't think there's many words where you do need a second squad turn 1. Because I mean, like respect. I was gonna say almost every army is going to be able to respect your 6-inch, and almost every army is going to be able to not worry too badly, even if you get it off. Right? If I am trading 190 points of Scions, effectively 220 points of Scions to kill your sticky and a 120 point tank, I'm still trading down. And it's just not good, even if you do get that turn 1, 6-inch deep strike off and kill a bunch of stuff. And I think a lot of higher players are also recognize it's like, yeah, you're going to kill my Lancer, you're going to kill my Reaper, and you're going to kill my Intercessors, right? I'm still happy with that. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. David, you were the apologist for this one. What are your thoughts on that?
So the game that I played today, I just got ran at by like 2,000 points of Assimilation Swarm, all turn 1, all advancing right into the middle. And I did exactly what Wesley's talking about, and I lost horribly. And I wish that I had been able to.
That's fair. I mean, there's going to be cases too where you just get rolled, right? I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I think this list is going to be awesome. It still has matchups where if your opponent is just 2,000 points of advanced in charge, you're going to be sad. Right? That's no guard list besides melee guard back when Solar could order Bulgrin is going to be able to look at 2,000 points of like Hormagaunts and Berserkers and World Years and be like, yeah, I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
That being said, Advanced Augury we're sleeping on. because there is a regiment with infiltrate that protects scouts that no one remembers, and it's
Sly
Sly
Marvo.
As I run Sly Marvo, and so if I have 15 points, I probably am still taking Shroud Projector, to be honest. But if I'm worried about it, Advanced Augury is really cool at protecting against Nurglings and everybody else from stopping my scout moves.
So I kind of want to get a brief overview from everyone. What are your thoughts then? Because when you're talking about double orders, that only works if your Scion command squads have the command rod. Are you always taking command rods all the time, or is there an argument to taking the plasma pistol instead? Wesley, you've had a lot of experience with the double orders, so let's start with you.
If you're running Gaunt's Ghost, yes, always. If you are not running Gaunt's Ghost, 1 squad pistol, 2 squads rod. And the whole logic for that is, again, as Clifton said, right, you get 2 of 2, 1 of 1, right? So if you're not running Ghosts, 2 should have rods, 1 shouldn't, and the one that is the 3 order guy should be the one who doesn't. Yeah, I think that's all there is to that.
Fair. Anything to add, gentlemen?
Exactly that.
All right, sounds good. Let's go ahead and get talking about the stratagems in here. So the first one, we got Bellicosa Drop for 1 CP. Any infantry of yours with Deep Strike can come in 6-inch Deep Strike, but they cannot charge anymore. So hey, everyone's an Aquilon now, so congratulations. We can get rid of that data sheet, give us something new. Clifton is what are your thoughts on this one? Because it's okay, and it does not work on Gaunt's Ghost, which is very sad because they technically don't have Deep Strike.
I want to talk about the combination of them all.
Okay, let's do it.
Help Scions to come back to me after. I'll talk about each one individually, but I really want to say about how they all join together as a Max Scion thing. But this one by itself, yeah, brilliant. I mean, how many times when you've been running Scion clubs that you just can't get the Scions in? Or say, like, one comes back to me that wasn't a long time ago. There was a unit chosen on an objective and some bikes just in front of them, and I really wanted to shoot the chosen, right? But I couldn't because the bikes were putting me out of my my range, right? To be able to shoot the chosen with the amount of shots I wanted to shoot them with the melters, they would have been out of range and everything. 6-inch drop, I would have been able to wipe them chosen off the board. That's just one example, but just being able to get angles and lines, because the amount of times you just can't see something, and all you got to do is see that one model with the majority of your models and that unit's dead, right? That 6 inches can help massively. I know it's not 3 inches, but we managed to play with that for a month. It's gone, right? But the 6 inches, I think it's that 3 extra inches is beautiful, and it's obviously situation dependent. When you need it, you can use it.
Yeah. I like it a lot as like a threat, right? Like I play a lot of chess. This feels more like the threat is stronger than execution. You tell your opponent, I can 6-inch, and then they play around and you're like, great, now you're in a slightly worse position than if I hadn't told you that. Sounds good. Now, David, I assume you're going to have some hot takes about firing hot, our next one here. 1 CP, your shooting phase, all of your las weapons, except for like some sniper or something, gets like +1 strength, +1 AP. Does this make you take volley guns, or do you still take meltas?
So, messing with a bunch of the math, I think into most targets that it matters, not using the strat, the meltagun is better. Like it kills Marines about the same, kills big stuff better. Both of them kill Infinity Guardsman bodies. So like the volley gun kills Infinity +12, doesn't matter. So it definitely doesn't make me do it on everybody because I'm only using the strat once. You're probably doing like 1, maybe 2 big drops. It does lead to a consideration of, do you want 1 unit with the hotshot volleys for like Marine equivalents or like Terminators? Maybe it's better into things like that. I'm still leaning towards pure Melta just because I generally like to maximize how well something can do when it doesn't get support rather than trying to like set up this perfect scenario. But I don't think 1 unit full of hotshot volleys is wrong. And then there's also a thought on your smaller units. If you're running 10 mans without a leader or 5 mans, they might want hotshot volleys just because they're more likely to be engaging with scouts or other like random little trash where that boost helps a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like, based on the reactions I'm seeing from Clifton and Nemo, you guys are both thinking it's like, yeah, maybe your third unit of Science has volleys.
Yeah, I'd actually put it on this. If you think about this one, as a king, gets out of the vehicle. He gives them 2 orders getting out of that vehicle. So now they've got front rank fire, second rank fire. They've got take aim. They've got +1 AP. They've got +1 strength, and they've got reroll. They also get reroll ones, right? That is a nice little brick to have. And you're just doing it in a tower up, so they get to advance and disembark as well. So they can get to those little annoying units behind walls, right, behind big L's. They can see them and get to them. And for 55 points, you're getting 4 buff for that Kazakin unit. I think that stratagem perfectly.
Yeah, interesting. I
The
mean,
other one to call out is Accolons. It swaps your sentry gun from flamers before all this came out to you take volley gun every time on them for the sentry. And the Accolons are where the 1 miss comes out, which is the Accolon's sniper rifle doesn't get the boost. The sentry does, their regular guns do, but for some reason the Kasserkin sniper gets it. Accolons have a different supply depot, so they don't get the sniper rifle with the boost.
Marksman rifle versus long las.
yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. We always love all the different keywords that we have in there. Any other thoughts on that? I
Oh,
actually really like the Kazarkin thing coming in. Nemo, is there any other use for this? Is it still like a 2 meltas, or 2 melta units, 1 volley gun unit, or is there like an argument for a different setup?
So I mean, it's going to combine with the stratagem we'll talk about later, but like there's one Scion squad that we've kind of saying starts on the table turn 1 always, right? And there's one Scion squad we also really don't want to die because it usually has our bombast array. And so I'm a fan of the volley guns because meltas are range 12, and it's a lot easier for me to take one squad and be like, hey, I see you've put this squad too far forward where none of your units are able to move to where it is currently. I'm going to draw the tightest line possible, kill that squad from 24 inches away, and then not die, redeploy, and do it again. And I think the volley guns are really good at doing that. And also, when you do play into things like 15 Deathwing Knights, they are nice to have because you cannot just throw 30 Scions at one squad of Knights. You have to go, one squad of Scions is near this Knights, one squad of Scions is near this one, and this squad is going to be a little bit away from the both of them, but able to see both. And having the ability to have a squad that can pivot fire and have the extra 12 inches of range is nice.
And also, too, I guess that is one spot where it is really nice having just like the 1 damage into Deathwing Knights, or if you're playing into Bulgrin or anything with -1 damage, like the Silent King, maybe like that's a little bit more valuable now that we have some of that running around. That makes sense. Now, Neem, I'm going to come back to you because you were the one who brought this to our attention. Fire and relocate, 1 CP, your shooting phase. It is not move, shoot, move like it sounds like it's supposed to be. It is, in fact, you can advance and shoot. So first off, I feel like this is the worst lore description of anything in this entire detachment.
It is vital they stay on the move and keep firing. You can move fast, stop moving, and then fire. It's just kind of cool as interaction.
Yeah.
There's 2 things to note. The first one, actually, there's probably 3 things to note. The first one is the key one that everyone knows immediately, right? It's the only stratagem that's not infantry locked. Works on tanks, right? Very nice. Being able to say tank commanders have a 19-inch threat range is cool. Being able to say they have a 16-inch threat range without move is also cool. The other cool thing is if you're not a Leontis player and you're trying to farm command points with your Voxcasters, this does not specify that you are selecting yourself to shoot. You just target a unit. And so you can finish your entire shooting phase, fire with everyone, go, hey, I didn't need a command point reroll. The squad that already fired can now advance and shoot. And try and farm a command point, which is awesome, right? That's really cool.
Wow, I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is the threat range it gives you turn 1 on your scout infantry is absurd. Kasserkin going 21 inches on both WTC and GW is enough to get behind your opponent's safe side ruin wall in almost every deployment zone and map. And so they could usually be like, hey, my scouts are going to form behind this building where you can't go with a 15-inch move. I'm fine. And now you can go, no, I actually have the ability with an Ursula free reroll and move, turn 1 and an advance to get behind that building, kill your scouts, and stop you from sticking this objective or whatever you're doing, right? It's very nice.
Yeah. Clifton, you look like you had something to add. No?
No,
All right.
I mean, I'd say it's more of the when it's all collected type of thing. But a big issue with Scions is if you bring a big blob of a big lot of them down in a particular place, and then you've cleared that, and you don't have the ability to get to the other place. Aerial extraction is going to really help, but being able to with a second unit get range to shoot as well is just added bonus, isn't it? Being able to get 2 units to another that you want to that we couldn't really do.
Yeah. All right, well, let's come to David next, because we got servo designators. 1 CP, you shoot with an infantry unit. It needs to be able to see the thing that it is shooting, and then that thing loses cover. This seems fine. Like, it's a Hellhound for 1 CP.
Yeah, Hellhounds, but your little like 5-man crappy Scion blocks can do it. Your Sly Marbo can do it. Your Gaunt's Ghost can do it because it's not regiment locked, I don't believe. So yeah, it's just great to be able to say ignores cover. A lot of Scion shooting is 1 AP, so with cover on a Marine body that basically is no AP, ignores cover means you're doing a significant more amount of damage. Meltas with ignore cover can frequently just punch through a tank, not give them a save at all. Ignore cover is good. That's why you played Hellhounds. Now you don't need to.
Cool. All right, now let's go to the next one. Clifton, you already talked about it a bit. Aerial extraction, 1 CP, end of your opponent's fight phase. 1 Valkyrie unit from your army, or something else with Deep Strike. You pick it up and put it back in strategic reserve, so it does not need to come down. I feel like you're trying to do this almost every turn.
Yeah, you spoke about that perfectly in your last video. It's completely changed the way that Guard are being played. I'm just going to paraphrase what you were saying in your last video, in the fact that you don't necessarily need to put Guard down in a place where the Scions down in a place where you're like, oh, they're in danger now, but they need to come here to do the damage, because you can place them somewhere else, which would usually have taken them out of the game for a good turn or two, kill something, and then you can pick them up.
Yeah.
That was phrased a lot better in Joshi's last video, so I watched it.
Yeah. I mean, Nima, I'm going to come to you, because I feel like this is just Host of Ascension GSC, the stratagem.
Yeah. It's weird to me how many detachments we look at and we go like, hey, at the end of the day, this detachment is only good because this mechanic is in the army. Like if GK didn't have pickups, the army's terrible, right? If Hypercrypt didn't have pickups, you're never playing Hypercrypt, right? And admittedly, Scions aren't as disgusting as Lamau. Here's a 3-inch deep striking monolith, in your backline. But like this is an absurd stratagem to have. It's just absurd. It gets around turn 3 reserves. Movement is king in 40k. The game is all based around movement and line of sights and drawing, mobility on your opponent, and it's just infinite mobility effectively. It combos well with their 6-inch deep strike stratagem. I mean, it's an absurd mechanic. It's arguably just as strong as the +1 to wound, if not better.
And it unlocks the +1 to wound as well, right? Like, I think if you had one piece but not the other, it's, both pieces are good, but in combination, I've definitely found in a couple of my games that I was playing, I would pick things up at the end of my opponent's turn. I'd be like, well, I'm going to put them exactly where they were, because I don't have anywhere better to put them, and now they're +1 to wound. So, like, that's the other half of it, right, is you just give yourself, you think of it as, one, it is pick up, movement is everything, like you said, or you can be like, this is also just +1 to wound the stratagem. Like, at worst, it is still a good stratagem.
There's also some weird shenanigans with the rules that might end up not fully making it through FAQs, but at present, it checks that the unit has Deep Strike, unlike starting the unit in Deep Strike, which checks every model in the unit. So if you have like a Primaris Psyker or an Ogrim Bodyguard glued to the unit, you can start them on the board, pick them up into strategic reserves, walk them on the board edge, which might be entirely pointless and silly, but could be useful for, say, Torox Prime with 10 guys in a Primaris Psyker, drive it up, go crazy, pick it up, do it again next turn. Might not be anything, but it at least lets you pretend that those guys can all come from the sky too.
Yeah. It seems
Not
all
to
right.
mention redeploying your Valkyries. Sorry, I had to.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about Valkyries at all.
Okay. If I heard like a month or two ago that people were like buying out Valkyries a lot, right? Like clearly someone either just like has a Valkyrie fetish, or they're just like someone has like foreknowledge on like what's coming in the codex. Like if Valkyries are good and like picking them up is worthwhile, suddenly the strat becomes super sick, because you can just like, you can embark people, you can put them in. There's a lot of fun things you can do. But I want to come back to David here, because we have my favorite stratagem in the game. We're saving the best one for last. This is Imperial Guards Kareen on my position. It's got a lot of little things we got to know. Firstly, it is end of your opponent's fight phase. We cannot do it in our fight phase. We target one regiment infantry unit from our army that is within engagement range of one of our enemy units, and then we roll a d6. On a 2+, the enemy suffers d6, and then we do 3d3 to ourselves. And David, I love this stratagem. It's hard to
It's
use.
so good.
But
So the best way to read it is this is better fallback and shoot. Because it is fallback and shoot and deal d6. Because the most frequent way that it happens is your opponent charges you, they kill half your Kriegers, they kill some of your Lasgun Scions, and then you're stuck in combat with some 8-bound that you really want to fall back from, but you can't, or you don't want to risk it, and you just say, you know what? Into my fight phase, blow up all my own models that are in engagement of you. You take some mortals too, that's cute. Now I'm out of combat. So it's fallback and shoot with extra steps. If your opponent's an idiot and they charge like a bunch of Riptides into your Kriegs, or you can charge them and keep them around for 2 fight phases, it's hilarious. But the biggest thing is it's a way for your opponent to say, can you fall back and shoot? And you to honestly say no and then do it anyways.
Neem, I'm going to come back to you because I know you had a great story about this. Clifton, what do you want to say about this before we get the story?
Yeah, completely agree with that. I misread it when I first read it. Didn't read the opponent's part and got really excited about a massive Chan unit charging in, but that's not going to happen. No, but there is one other way of using it in a mass Scion list, and that is the amount of times that you're left with 1 or 2 little models that are stopping a massive 9-inch bubble of Scions coming down. Like, say, for example, 5 Storm Boys are coming towards your Catachan. It's now worth overwatching, killing 2 or 3 of them, right? And then when they're in, you activate this at the end of the turn, get rid of them. So now they aren't, because the reason your opponent's done that is to stop your Scions coming down in that 9 inches, maybe 6 inches. You're now stopping them being able to do that, or having a chance of stopping them being able to do that, opens up the mass Scion play a lot more. I think the way David was talking about it is the best way and most common way to use it, but I think in mass Scion lists, this is also going to be helpful in that regard.
That's definitely not something I thought about at all, but yeah, that's one of the things I would oftentimes do to people, especially when we were running Cyclops a lot, is just like, well, I don't want you to Rapid Ingress there, so here's a little Cyclops, and now you cannot come in within 9 inches of this. And this helps us, it doesn't completely remove, but it helps alleviate that. And Wesley, I know, because you've talked about it in our group chat already, that there is a third way that you have found this to be very good. So what have you done with this stratagem so far?
I can sum this up with a sentence, but I'll give the story after. I've played 12 games. There's a running tally. I've done 73 mortal wounds with this stratagem to my opponent.
Okay.
So I am a huge fan of Kriegsman Brick, Platoon Command Squad, Marshal, Ogre, and Bodyguard. It's 27 models. That unit loves to daisy chain out and have a footprint that's 15 inches long. And the amount of times my opponent goes, I'm going to charge the unit in front of them. I'm going to charge the Gaunt's Ghost so they can't pick up who are near them. And you just go, I'm going to heroic, charge your unit, but daisy chain and swing my squad in 5 different directions, tag 7 different units, and just deal 20 plus mortal wounds to your opponent is hilarious. I had a little picture thing I made for my teammates to show them how hilarious this is. But yeah, notably, I had one game where I was playing against Iron Storm, and I was able to tag all 3 Vindicators, a Lancer, a Reaper, and the Tech Marine that had originally charged, and it did like 26 mortal wounds to them for 1 CP. And then the models who were the 3d3 mortals to my own units, I just killed all of the singular models that pulled them into engagement range. And so I still got fallback and shoot and just shot them on
Yeah. Yeah, something that I'm sure you've thought or you've already realized that I'm just now realizing is one of the major parts about like this, countercharge, pile, and consolidate that you do. That move has to end in coherency. But when, Vindicator punches kills a guy, the Rep X punches kills a guy, you don't have to remove models such that you're still in coherency. You can just like have like one guy here, one guy there, pick and just not have them connected at all to the main unit. Suddenly you're just in combat with so many things. That how much are you like intentionally like trying to set this up versus how much are you just finding that this is just something that occurs as part of your gameplay?
I mean, I'm very rarely trying to set this up, right? I mean, usually when I'm playing my army, right, I'm like, hey, these guys are going to be 4 and some change apart from each other, so you can't tag my unit, right? And now all I'm doing is I'm making sure it's 4 and some change, but I'm also within 6 of the front of my base, right? So I'm keeping it very precise. I can be like, hey, you're not tagging me if you charge my unit and kill me, but I do have the ability to heroic you, right? Um, People don't really want to charge Kriegsmen, and because if you're not a melee heavy unit, they're just going to lock you there forever, and then you give your opponent 20 points because that unit's stuck in combat and it's ADOC. But also, you can only really use the heroic idea effectively on Kriegsmen, right? Any other unit's going to die, and also any other unit doesn't have the floor space on the table to actually swing out and go around tagging things.
Yeah.
It is hilarious when it happens, though. It's awesome.
Gotcha.
And I will say, though, the other thing I was going to mention too is I was also in team Clifton for a while about it's not your fight phase, but for everyone who's in that mindset, the stratagem would be so absurdly not.
It would
okay
be
if
so.
It was,
It'd be so dumb.
The amount of times I'd be like, yeah, my 20 Catachet are scouting 6, moving forward 9, charging 6 of your units. Please take 14, 15 plus mortal wounds. Yeah.
Absolutely absurd. Now I got two questions. I'll pose the first one here to Nemo because he brought up something that I don't think I've ever heard someone argue before. I know there are arguments on places like Reddit and Discord on whether you take a marshal or a platoon command squad, and you're here arguing for not just both, but adding an Ogre bodyguard on top. This is a lot of points. It's 120 points of officers, 40 more points for an Ogre, or 35 maybe for an Ogre bodyguard. That's a lot of extra points for this. What's the justification for the extra 150 points that you're spending on this Krieg unit?
It just never dies. It never ever dies. I do not know a unit in the game that will kill more than 15 of the models plus the bodyguard. ICC with full rerolls +1 to hit, Lance, and the +1 AP from the stratagem kill 15 guys. 15 guys if the bodyguard dies, and that unit is the unit that should do it, right? And so it's really frustrating for your opponent because every single game I can go, here is 2 Kriegsmen on the middle objective. The rest of them are daisy chained behind a wall. That is 8 OC. You cannot take that from me. You also cannot kill this unit. If you line up enough models on the table to actually kill the unit, you just kill the 2 or 3 guys who are on the point. And then you table them. And if they do anything less than that, you just lose your 12 Kriegsmen and score 25 points of primary throughout the course of the game. 20 points of primary. Yeah. It's amazing.
I can see David squirming.
Yeah, well, I posted a picture.
You can just pop them up. If the deployment has the wall right there, just bring 2 guys back on the objective and laugh. It's like they didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
On 1, 3, 5, and 8 for GW, you can revive onto the point without being able to be seen. It's awesome.
Yeah. Now, I think the big question then is why both the and the platoon command squad? I think that's where a lot of people are probably going to get caught up, and I'm definitely because 60 points for basically a 5-up Feel No Pain instead of a 6-up Feel No Pain doesn't sound worth it in my head.
Yeah. So the Ogre bodyguard with command squad at face value adds effectively 5 ablative wounds through Feel No Pain to the unit on a 6-up Feel No Pain. The marshal adds effectively 13, right? That's 8 extra wounds, which is key. Either unit without itself adds about that 6 to 8-ish wound cap, but together it's 13 and the others. But the other important thing is you don't run solar, right? And you also want to have some form of long-range orders. And I don't like putting all my eggs in baskets into a unit that we have said the whole talk so far is meant to be a Scion squad ordering Scions, but I still want to be able to order my other things. And so the joy that this creates is I don't want to run a Cadian command squad plus Cadians for Ursula, but I still want to have that squad. And so I can always just run a solo Ursula near that squad, have Ursula order that Kriegsman unit and my other Kriegsman unit, and then have my Marshal, who now also gets the 24-inch orders, act as a pseudo 24-inch order.
Interesting. So I got one more question on this. Are you running 1 brick with the Marshal and the Ogre bodyguard and the PCS, or is that both of your Krieg bricks?
I'm not that greedy. So
okay, just the one. Okay.
Let me tell you, if we did not get nerfed, 100% it's in there. The
Fair.
list I was running prior to the data slate was both of them.
Yeah.
But now, when we lost 165 points in infantry guard, that was the first thing that went.
Fair. Now, okay, so I know your argument. You were already running 20 bricks of Krieg beforehand. I'm going to move over to Clifton and David and start here with Clifton. What are your thoughts on Krieg in this detachment? Because I know Wesley is first thing in the list.
I hadn't thought about Krieg in this detachment, but that, after hearing everything that you've just told us, Nemo, that is fantastic. Plus, the fact that you're re-rolling hits of 1, and here's another advantage of taking that platoon command squad. You don't need the medic anymore. That's an extra special weapon. The amount of special weapons already in a 20-man Krieg, then you've got all those additional special weapons of the command squad. You're going to be getting +1 to hit because you're always going to have a guy down, right? Or you're going to overcharge your plasma to make sure you got a guy down. You've got +1 to hit with reroll wounds, and then you can have +1 ballistic skill, maybe. I know you were saying you were doing +1 OC, but if the need's there, right? You've got so many special weapons with that additional squad that are hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. That's actually quite magic, that. Yeah.
Kriegsmen with take aim, rerolling 1s have a 97% hit rate for a 27-man unit of infantry. And they have more special weapons than Scions.
David, have you been convinced, or are these two lunatics just like on a different planet?
So I've been running naked 20-man Kriegs for a fair while now. And I'm not sold on the Marshal, I'm not gonna lie. That's 60 points. It could just be 5 horses off doing something else entirely, and I get you that nothing kills that full unit. I've also not found really anything that kills 25 guardsman bodies, like in one activation. So you can do everything you were talking about with a much cheaper unit, and then get 100 points somewhere else. That being said, if what you're talking about catches on and people start bringing things tooled out to kill it, then I might need to upgrade to that, because then my 25 guys will just be blown away in 2 seconds.
My issue is that I fully agree with you. It's a footprint issue. I would love to just run 60 Kriegsmen solo and cut the 2 marshals in my 2 bricks for 320s. But I almost always found I was just losing a squad turn 1 if I went second.
That's fair.
That's fair. Makes a lot of sense. Well, I think we've talked about all of the weird nonsense with the Krieg. So let's go back. Clifton, you had some things you wanted to talk about with the combinations of stratagems, and I can see him. He's coming ready.
4 issues mass Scion this had previously, right? So before Aquilons, I was trying to run, when I knew I figured a Bullgrin nerf would come in. So I was running mass Scions, no Bullgrin, and either I was running Strike and Brick and some Rough Riders to get at things behind the walls and to do some counter-attacking, or I was running Exterminators and Dons to get the extra AP and stuff like this. It worked quite well, right? Then the Aquilons came, and instead I replaced with Aquilons, and the Tank Commander after the Tank Commander buff also worked quite well, but there's 4 main issues, right? First issue is you need units to move out to make space for the drops, right? And sometimes you just cannot get enough of those drops in to do the damage you need to do on your go turn. Right? That's the first issue. Second issue is sometimes when you do drop, you need to hit things that are too far away from the rest of the action, and you need to hit them, right? Then you sign up those signs that have done that are out of the game, right? Which is a big part of your list already out of the game, right? Third issue is how do you deal with things behind walls, right? Quite a big issue for things that have a 9-inch deep strike. And the fourth issue is the clock, because you've got so many different shooting profiles in each unit, right? Not much you can do about the clock, and in fact, the fact that we have so many good stratagems actually makes the decision phase longer, or can do. But for the other 3 things, these stratagems in combination with each other really, really help, right? Because your Bellicosa drop, that's getting rid of, at least for 1 unit, the issue of that 9-inch, right? With the fire and relocate and aerial extraction, if you're somewhere else, you can get a lot of you can pivot to another objective or other units that you need to get to, right? The ignore cover, very often, in fact, almost all the time you came down with Scions, unless it was a bit of an open central objective, right? The opponent's going to have cover saves on a lot of things, right? So that got rid of the fact that you were losing your AP1, right? So that stratagem, even though it's just quite a basic stratagem, is absolutely brilliant, right? And then the on my position, being able to remove those annoying 1 or 2 men that had survived and were stopping a massive aura of you coming down, just fantastic. The only one that doesn't really solve any of those problems is firing hot, and firing hot's not a bad stratagem to have anyway. So all together, these combined really help with a mass Scion list. I really do think they help massively with a mass Scion list. And with the Bellicosa drop combined with, say, you're running Rough Riders to get rid of chaff or something behind walls, right? Your opponent's having to deploy a little bit further back, so they can't push into the L. So you can, with that 6-inch drop, you're almost definitely being able to see some of that unit now, right? Whereas with a 9-inch, even if they push back a bit, sometimes you won't be able to. With the 6-inch, you're probably going to be able to now. So these stratagems, aside from the clock issue, have, in theory, I haven't run a game like you guys yet, but in theory, these are going to massively help the mass Scion list.
Yeah. David, Nemo, what do you want to add or anything you want to push back on?
Yeah, what's the fix for the fifth issue, which is how expensive all this shit is?
That's living in China with access to.
Yeah, I've seen Wesley's answer to that as well. They look pretty cool. If you're any Halo fans are there, you could probably hit them up.
Yeah.
Real
my
quick,
entire army is Halo themed.
Did they let you play that at WCW?
WCW, no, LVO has approved the army. So
nice, awesome.
Yep.
But yeah, any other responses to Clifton?
I don't think it's a response. The only issue I was going to mention, because it's a real one that we've kind of all been hinting towards, is you can run tanks, but we don't like them a whole lot, right? You can run a bunch of infantry is kind of what everyone's kind of leaning towards. And one thing to mention is if this is a detachment you're looking at and you're like, hey, I want to play this, this detachment requires a lot more reps than people realize it's going to require. Especially with your, this isn't like Hypercrypt Necrons where you can be like, I'm going to buy my buddy's Necrons, throw it on the table, and play it. It is physically draining. It is mentally taxing. And on a 115 clock, it is genuinely challenging to play. And there's a bunch of people who have talked with me about like my WCW performance, all the GTs I've had recently, and have been like, hey, I tried playing your list. How in the world do you play this in 115? And so that's a real issue. Like it will take like 20, 30 games for most people to get in the ballpark where they can consistently play this list on the clock. And just keep that in mind.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I know, Clifton, you were talking about when you were playing a similar list in Combined Regiment before that you were running into some clock issues despite how consistently you were scoring.
Yeah, it's why my last team's tournament, I just went straight back to my melee guard that I hadn't played since July because I knew how to run them efficiently and time-wise efficiently, and I knew how exactly what I was going to be doing. I knew exactly what my deployment was going to be. I knew how I'd pivot and stuff like that, so you can run it quick, because it's reps, just like Nemo was saying. I mean, I'd had 60-odd games with similar lists. Whereas with the Scions, I think it needs more. I think it needs more than 20, to be honest. I think it needs more than 20. And that was with Combined Regiment, where you don't have all of the strats which are giving you, where you're having to think a bit longer because you've got all these amazing strats now, right? With Combined Regiment, that thought process was out the window because you're only using rapid ingress, Overwatch, grenades, and reinforcements once and Inspired Command. That's all you're really thinking about. Yeah. Right? Whereas now we've got all these extra strats to think about because the problem is with the Scion list, and this isn't even going to the extent of Nemo's mass guard list, right? Infantry guard. The problem with the Scion list is thinking about your positioning. Like, how many times have you guys played Hypercrypt players, Grey Knight players, and they spend 10 minutes at the start of the phase figuring out exactly what they're going to do with each unit, right? Even top players, they're almost sometimes debilitated by how many options they have, right? That's kind of where you get into with a mass Scion list as well. And that's going to be even more the case with aerial extraction and fire and relocate. So you need reps to make sure that you can run this. I mean, I've never played on a 115 clock. That's with the amount of models you're using, that's insanity. We used to play 130. Now we've got the Chinese and foreign community together because of translation issues. We've extended it to 145. but never played in 115. That is impressive.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tournaments. Now, David, I want to come to you a little bit because you've had a little bit of time to play with this as well. We have a lot of really good stratagems now. It's not just grenade, tank shock, overwatch every single turn. How are we budgeting CP, and what can we do to alleviate the fact that we are being pulled in so many different directions with such a limited resource?
So first off, stop putting solar in your lists for this detachment. It's wrong. I will make fun of you.
He will also do it for combined regiment, but that's a different argument.
Combined regiment, there's an argument. Like, you're inefficient, but you're a nice safety blanket. This detachment, it's wrong. You're wrong. Stop doing it. Creed
some help.
is a big one. So first biggest one is Creed and Voxcasters. Creed letting you do stuff for free. Voxcasters letting you turn Creed's free strat into actually plus half a CP. So you can have turn one position your unit that's going to get picked up next to Creed. So you can do that for free. Give them a Voxcaster instead of one of their las guns. There's half a CP. Boom, you've already got half a solar. You spend your CP on your Catachan or your Cadian or whatever unit. That also gives you your CP. Probably never worth it to take a Voxcaster on Kriegs because you lose a plasma gun. Wesley, you're not shaking your head, so that's right.
Yeah.
So Voxcasters are the biggest way. Discard your tactical cards. Sometimes it's better not to cleanse for 2 and just get a CP off of discarding that, depending on what you need to be getting done. And then the biggest one is don't fire stupid overwatches. If you've got like a couple Kriegs looking at an Armiger that's full health, you're not going to kill it with those 2 meltaguns. Just stop it. Scions can overwatch incredibly well. That's still usually worth it. But don't fire stupid overwatches. Don't let your tank commanders fire overwatch. If your CP isn't directly fixing a problem and like solving something that wins you the game or advancing your strategy, don't spend it. Unless you're doing it for free with Creed to try and get the radio to kick off something.
Nemo, you've
also,
had the
make
most
sure
game.
you
Oh,
find
go ahead.
out from your make sure you find out from your TO if Creed is per turn or per round. The app says turn, the FAQ says round. No one knows what's right, so if it says per turn, you're golden. If it says per round, Creed's still probably worth it.
Yeah.
LVO did roll turn, by the way, which is awesome.
Oh, if LVO. Wait, that's still done by FLG these days, right?
FLG, yeah.
Yeah, I love FLG. Sometimes they have some odd rulings, but
Fun fact for guard players in LVO in the Astra Militarum FAQ, take cover works on tanks.
When is that relevant?
If you can take cover a tank, and if your opponent would put AP that would put you on worse than a 3-up save, you get the plus to save.
That is neither rules
weird
as written.
Interpretation of the rule.
Yeah. Neither
Really
is written
awesome.
nor as intended. So I remember
Yes.
I remember I mentioned to David one time, I was watching Morty and Glory play against Aiden Smalley, one of the disgustingly resilient guys, and he put take cover on a Chimera, and I was like, oh my god, it actually did something because they took -1 save. It actually was relevant. But yeah, that's an odd ruling. Nemo, you've had the most reps on this detachment. How are you finding CP management?
I will reiterate what David said with Overwatch. The biggest thing that I have had to learn is, and again, this is just because I'm approaching 500 reps of infantry guard since, basically 14 months ago, is my Overwatches don't kill things anymore. It's like Scions kill things, right? But before I could be like, oh, there's 5 intercessors in front of my Kriegsman brick. I know that's like 17, 18 lethal hits, right? So fire away. And now it's just not, right? Your 6s and 5s. It's not good. I think the biggest thing is grenades is sadly one of the things that gets used a lot less. Because before an infantry guard, you were just like, yeah, I get 15 CP usually because I'm using 2 to 3 strats on Voxcasters every single round, right? And I informing that command point back. And usually the breakdown I told people is it was reinforcements for 2, it was 2 to 3 overwatches, 1 to 2 rapid ingresses, and then the majority of it outside of that for me was inspired command and redrawing secondaries. And I think that's a big one that goes that I don't want to go. And so I haven't really had to deal with it yet in my game because my draws, I haven't had a game yet where my draws have been bad many times in a row. But part of the reason, like if people look at the record of this list for infantry guard, I think I've scored like 2,100 points out of 23 games. it's because I spend like 15 command points at every single tournament redrawing secondaries. Because at least infantry guard's mantra is you can score 90, I'm scoring 100, right? I'm not going to stop you from scoring. I am going to score though. And you don't get to do that a whole lot as much if your game plan is to have this tactical reposition game. I still think it's better to take the tactical reposition game, right? But like if I'm on 2 CP and I draw a bad card, I'm probably going to keep it now rather than get rid of that card.
Fair. Clifton, anything to add?
I think there's another reason. I think there's another reason for that as well. Why you're keeping it is because if we're looking at CP regeneration here, right? All of these stratagems are encouraged to be used on units with Voxy, right? Which is what you guys have spoken about. Now, just to bring some numbers into that, that means if you use 2 a turn, you've got 5/9 of a chance of bringing a CP back, right? But on the turn Krieg gets out, say you're doing the Krieg thing I was talking about, right? You're now using 3 orders. You've got 21 out of 27 chance of getting a CP back. So not a guarantee, but a very, very decent chance of getting a CP back over 3/4 chance, right? You've also got, as you were saying before, the guarantee of if you've got a secondary you don't want, right? So realistically, you might not be getting 15, but you're getting 13. You're getting 13 CP a game. So it's not like it's dropping that much not running solo.
Makes sense. Now
Yeah.
I want to get a couple of one of the major things that I'm looking at when I built my very first list for this detachment is I put 3 tank commanders in it. And I know, Nemo is already like, it's got a vehicle keyword, it is not in this list. You take a Cyclops or a Scout Sentinel to block, bring it down, that's as far as we'll go. But David, you've been playing more Lehman Russes than I think anybody in their right mind is normally supposed to at a bunch of tournaments, and you've been doing well with them. Do we still put Lehman Russes in Bridgehead?
So I tried some tank commanders, and they basically always, when you have 3, one massively overperforms and does 37 damage to an armature, one does about average, one does below, and lethal hits kind of smooth that out to the below still got the kill, and you were fine. With this, the one that underperforms causes huge problems. If 2 underperform, you fall to pieces with tank commanders. And with 3 tank commanders and the 2 sentinels to give them rerolls, that's like almost 800 points. That's just too much to be spending on not Scions in the Scion detachment. And I think that just kind of falls back to that thing I was talking about at the very beginning of like, if you start adding too many tank commanders, too many exterminators, you might as well just cross out Bridgehead and write Combined Regiment, and you've got a better army. Like, Scions and Combined Regiment are still great. Lethals and +1 to wound into infantry are, someone who's better at math is going to yell at me, but about the same thing. With rerolls, lethals actually is maybe better into the targets they want. So once you start adding tanks, I think you just start writing a Combined Regiment list, and by not playing a Combined Regiment list in Combined Regiment, you've just made yourself worse. You're playing a Hypercrypt army in Canoptic. You're playing Grey Knights and never picking guys up. Like, what are you doing? Just stop it.
Yeah, so what?
So you can put a couple in. I think Vanquishers are funny. Like, Clifton was talking about buying space, and 3 Vanquishers buys a lot of space if you just want big things to push at people. But I would be looking for the cheapest, beefiest vehicles you can find rather than the highest damage output vehicles. Your Scions are your damage. Your Vanquishers are just large bricks to drive at people.
So it sounds like Vanquishers, maybe Eradicators, and then like Hellhounds. Is that mostly what we're looking at?
Yeah, I could be convinced on an Exterminator Russ or 2, just if you start finding that the AP really matters, but anything more expensive than an Exterminator that's a vehicle is wrong. Dorns were wrong in Combined Regiment, they're extra wrong here.
There it is.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Hellhounds and Vanquishers are the 2 vehicles I would be looking at. Maybe Hydras, but I'm not the hugest Hydra
Oh, that's
fan.
true. Yeah. Clifton, thoughts? What vehicles are we running in this? I think there's an argument for some or for some dedicated transports, but anything heavier than that?
If we're looking like a mix, then potentially the Exterminator, but now it's hitting on 4s and it's not got lethals. It's a lot for 170 points now. It's you want that durability, like David was saying, you go for the bank. Because it is at this point, they aren't your damage dealers. your exterminate you're only bringing into buff, but you've already got ignore cover. You've already got a way to give some of your weapons -1 AP. You don't really need the exterminator now for 170 points. So if you want that to push out with a good hull, then yeah, I reckon you're on the money there with the bank. I'm still going to go for mass Scions, and therefore my only vehicles will be Talroxes, potentially Talrox Primes, but I think they're going to be too expensive. If rules change, I think they're going to be a little too expensive. So Talroxes to get units behind the wall, to shoot units behind walls that you need to get at that advance and disembark, I think is quite key. Or Rough Riders to go just deal with chaff behind a wall, rather than vehicles. Because the vehicles now, just without the lethals, because the vehicles are priced based on lethals. Let's be honest, right? Over the last few data slides, they've been priced based on lethals. Without those lethals, and they're not getting reroll onto it, are they? That's just infantry.
Just infantry.
Yeah. They're not getting reroll onto it. So just don't feel right the points. And I know Space Marine players that watch this will be like, yeah, but our vehicles aren't as tough, and they don't have melters on the side and all this, that, and the other. Yeah, but your vehicles hit on threes. And there's so much better ways to buff them, right? Yeah. So like that variance, because yeah, I know hitting on a 3 and hitting on a 4 isn't necessarily that much hugely different when you've got all those extra weapons, but it's the reliability, right? If you can't rely on a unit, like I don't rely on my Rough Riders to be able to wipe out a unit. If I've got in my head, I don't know they're going to wipe out that unit, that's fine. That's what, and if they do wipe out unit, brilliant, right? But when you need reliability, hitting on 4s, potentially 5s if they got stealth or there's some Nurgle stuff going on, right? Without lethals, you then got to wound on 5s with Melter. Nah, you're losing the liability. So I don't know. It'd have to be thanks, yeah, because of the body more than anything.
Fair enough. I'm going to come back over to Nemo here, but I'm going to reword the question for you, okay? This is a similar one to the Scions at the beginning. Like, I don't have that many Scions. What's the fewest I can get away with? I don't have 200 infantry bodies, but I do have a lot of Chimeras and Tauroxes. How do I make them work in this detachment?
I think if you are working with what you have, I would so much rather see one tank commander before I see Chimeras or Tauroxes. The issue that I don't like a whole lot with Chimeras and Tauroxes is the points. They're just not worth it at those point break brackets to me. And if you are low on model count, right, the Scions 3x15s should all be off the table before you ever consider running models inside the Tauroxes or Chimeras. And they're the only models that benefit from +1 to wound. So I don't think it's worth it to run those. I'd much rather see one Extant commander. What I was considering for the longest time in Infantry Guard, I admittedly cut it and went a little bit more towards the meme of Infantry Guard. I was playing one tank for the longest time because it denied Bring It Down, obviously. But having the meme of I'm exactly 200 bodies was a little funnier. So, but it was a Basilisk and it was a Hellhound. Basilisk for slowing down charges, movements, being able to pre-measure my opponent a lot easier, and denying Bring It Down was kind of a really optimal draw. I think it doesn't make the cut with the points nerfs. I think it's a great inclusion if you have one and you want to have something that makes you being able to pre-measure your opponent a bit better. The Hellhound, I think, is a bit more of a miss now because, again, we have Ignore's cover. I will say my favorite part about Combined Regiment was deep striking Scions onto the 3rd floor of a ruin, fields of firing people, exterminating them, hellhounding them, and being like, yes, my multiguns are AP7, no cover. If you AOC, the plasma still goes straight through your Land Raider. But that doesn't exist. So I think Tank Commander, I agree with David that the robots are bad, especially in this detachment. They're very bad. So I think if you're running a Lehman, you're running it for its data sheet ability more so than its guns. So battle tank maybe, exterminator maybe.
Fair.
And it goes back to what Clifton said too. But like the best part about this detachment is there's so little variance in a lot of what it does. Um, Even our Kriegsmen, 4-up ballistic skill units we said earlier, hit on 2s rerolling 1s. Castergan 2s rerolling 1s, Scions 2s rerolling 1s, Equivalents 2s rerolling 1s, right? With all with take aim, right? You don't realize how miserable it is to play triple tank commander until your tank commander rolls a 1 on shots and then misses 3 of them. It's not fun, right? And that is the other thing, by the way, that with Space Marines, you hit on 3s and your tanks also innately reroll half their stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
I Basilisk Hellhound maybe.
Fair enough. We're running up on time, I know, here, because Clifton's, his lunch break is almost over, so I'm going to get some rapid-fire
Oh, no,
questions.
no, this is lunch break. I'm doing lunch duty in 7 minutes.
Fair enough. All right, he's got to go
I've
handle.
gotta do
Got to
that.
go handle the kiddos. So I'm gonna do this rapid fire. Firstly, raise your hand if you still take Aquilons in this detachment, or are they just dead? Okay, Nemo, give me a quick
One at
thoughts.
most.
One at most.
One
Why?
unit.
One at
Maybe one.
If you're going to run above 45 Scions, I think you start with 1 Aquilon before you start adding more Scions, because Aquilons are better in Determinator bodies, which are what Scions notoriously struggle to kill.
Fair enough. I got a really funny stratagem, or a really funny combination of things, where I take the turn 1 deep strike enhancement. I start something on the board, and we're playing rapid escalation. I can deep strike 45 Scions on turn 1. Is this ever good? And when would you look to do it?
When you also have Gonskos and a Calidus.
Fair. Now, the more serious version of this is something that we didn't really talk about. With the priority drop and you turn 1 deep strike, one of the things that I think it kind of solves a problem with that Clifton was kind of talking about with his Catachan, you go first, you 6-inch drop, and you create a perfect line across your opponent's entire deployment zone. How valuable do you guys find that? Starting with Clifton.
I'm actually doing this with Deceptors at the moment. I've got a Deceptors list where I've got, although they do have a reactive move, which makes it so much more ugly, where I've got 20 cultists that I'm conglining across. Now, they can't move forward because as soon as one's dead, it destroys coherency. So whether I go first or second, I'm staying there. As soon as the opponent moves, it moves forward and just locks everything in, right? Catachan are really, really good at doing that with their orders. Not as good as the Deceptors cultists are, but if you get first turn, right, and you can move, move, right, you've scouted, you've moved, and then you get a good roll on the advance. You are blocking the opponent in for a turn. If you do that with 3 units, you're blocking the opponent away from objectives and therefore away from many secondaries for their first turn. They're not scoring primary on their second turn. It works really, really well if you're willing to sacrifice them 3 units of Catachan, right? I wouldn't do it on a unit of. You're talking about doing it on a unit of Scions,
Yeah.
right? Across the whole.
It seems
On
but,
it,
it's just
a
really
lot.
expensive.
You're talking with no Overwatch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, well, no, it's got to be the turn 1 deep strike one.
Yeah, it'll have to be turn 1 deep strike. So they
Yeah.
could be overwatched. You can't do it because as soon as if you're stretching them out, right? As soon as they lose 1 model, right? Because you've got the tri point at both ends, right? As soon as they lose 1 model, you're going down to 6 models. So it wouldn't work because all the opponent needs to do is overwatch with something that can kill 1 Scion.
Fair. Any other thoughts? Is there ever
Yeah.
a time where this is valuable, David, Nemo?
I am aggressively anti-move block. I think this is probably where me and Clifton are going to disagree the most, but I think move blocking is almost always the wrong choice. Anytime someone moves blocks me, I just say thank you for the 300 points of models you put in front of me. I will gladly just like go around where I need to and kill stuff. So
Yeah.
I just don't value move blocking particularly at all. I also only play on GW terrain though. Maybe on WTC it matters a lot more.
It's a bit better on WTC for sure.
That's fair.
I think now that it's a 6-inch, it's terrible. Right, because a 3-inching your opponent twice, like how what Vanguard used to do to people or whatever it was, it only lets them move forward 4 inches if they're a non-melee army. Over turn 1, turn 2, and it denies them 2 turns of primary on turns where you go first, 1 turn of primary if you go second. Now that it's 6 and 6, they get to move 10 inches, which is enough to reach their objective. And so it doesn't deny primary more for their turn, and that's also if you're giving up 2 units. So it's now that it's 6 inches, it's bad on points, and your opponent still gets to do what they want to do for the most part.
Fair. quick shout real quick, and then we'll talk about like the place of this detachment in the general meta game. What is a unit? We'll start with Nemo again, then go around Nemo. What is a unit that you would never have considered playing in Combined Regiment, but is now worth playing in Bridgehead?
9 mortars.
9 mortars. Oh yeah, because you're
9
talking about
mortars.
the it's helpful for the mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, it kills 37 guardsmen over the course of 5 turns. So your command squads are dying, mine aren't. And it's only 150 points. It also 6-inch screens the back line in the mirror match. It's an auto win in the mirror match.
Interesting. David, what's something that you would play in Bridgehead?
So I'm always playing Creed, but the infantry squad with a mortar that used to go with her is now replaced by Cadians when I play Creed, because the mortar doesn't do anything with Creed in this detachment. There's not a suppressing fire, a fields of fire to apply with the mortar. So you just want to sticky with Cadians and have Creed playing forwards so she can get free overwatches or grenades or shenanigans going off. So
Yeah.
whole video about Cadians are bad, but they're finally worth putting
They're
in the
finally
list.
okay now that they've gone up in points. Clifton, what's something that you would play in Bridgehead that you wouldn't in Combined Regiment?
Either the Krieg Kazakin in a Taurox thing I mentioned before, or, and this is going to raise eyebrows, 5 rattlings to make sure that I can't be that their infiltrators can. I mean, I know it's only a 50% chance because they might win the roll off, but there's a good chance that their infiltrators aren't going to stop my Catachan moving out and making space because if you go in mass signs, you need to make space.
Totally
For
fair.
10 rattlings or always 5?
I think the new rattlings you can be 10, right?
You can get one of your.
Yeah,
But
if
I
you
wouldn't.
play the 10.
No.
What about
No,
two
you only need
fives?
5. You only need the rattlings are only there to either stop World Eater Scout, right, or to stop other opponents infiltrate stopping your scout.
Makes
Like,
sense.
that's the only.
You get a whole last
it's nice.
And once per game lethal hits.
Yeah, you get the dog.
The dog itself is worth 60 points. Let's be real. Let's go ahead and
You're a terrible unit without infiltrate. They are a terrible unit.
yeah. Let's go ahead then and close out our discussion. We only got a couple minutes left about where Bridgehead fits in the meta. Now, my initial take when I saw this detachment was I think it is going to be very oppressive against anything that is not hull spam, but I'm slowly coming around to thinking it might just be oppressive. Nemo, where do you think this detachment rates? Like, is it the strongest detachment in the game with what we have? Is it like, on par with Ironstorm? Where are we putting this?
If you can play this on clock, this is objectively the best attachment in the game. Even into, I mean, I got Battle Master at WCW. I scored 676 points or some number. My lowest game was an 87 or whatever it was, right? Like this list does not have bad matchups. Even in bad matchups where you have bad matchups, you have 400 OC, and your opponent is at best getting 20 points of primary.
Now, is that only as like full infantry, or
Correct.
So what about like a little bit of armor, like a couple dedicated transports or something?
Most of the lists that I am seeing, like on the Discord server, for example, and also what we've talked about a bit today, I think I place high A, like in level with Ironstorm. It's just the OC is so objectively real, and no one realizes it until you're like, hey, you have to kill my 80 OC unit to die me 5 primary, and you have to pray you kill all 10 of my Catachan and Overwatch for you to get primary.
Gotcha.
Is oppressive.
So just to make sure I'm on the same page, then what would you rate without Bridgehead? What do you think is like the best like detachment or like list archetype in the game right now? Is it Ultramarines Ironstorm? Is like Star Shatter Necrons? I just want to get like a bar.
It is close to Ironstorm Marines, and whatever it's called, the new GK detachment is also absurdly strong.
Gotcha. Sure.
Star Shatter's probably right below the two of them, but 6-fold rerolling NBK is so much scarier than people realize it is.
Yeah. So we're like right up there with like the strongest stuff in the game then.
Yeah.
At worst. Yeah. Cool. Let's go to Clifton next. I'm gonna hear David's hot take at the end of it.
I haven't played this, right? So it's all theory to me at the moment. You guys have. I wouldn't have thought you'd have said it is the best in the game, but definitely up there. If you think it's the best and you've played 20 games with it, I'll go with you on that. I mean, I've seen some disgusting lists for the new Librarius detachment as well. I know Ironstorm's taking a lot, but the new Librarius one looks pretty sweet from Reigns. It's definitely this guard one is definitely up there with some of the top.
Gotcha. I'm gonna come back to you in a sec,
If
Clifton.
you guys have played it, if you guys have played it and you think it could be the best, as long as there's an infiltrate unit, I've got to put that
Fair.
in there,
Yeah.
right?
Slime army.
Then then yeah, I'll go with you
Yeah.
on that.
I'm gonna come back to you in a sec, Clifton, because I want to hear what David has to say, and then I'm gonna talk about teams real quick.
I think it has made Scions, which were already one of the best data sheets, into the best data sheet in the game. And if you can get full value out of your 45 to 75 Scions, then, like, if the matchup works out that way, your opponent lets you, it's great. If people start teching for it and infiltrators start filling the world, gladiator reapers are all over the place, I think you will probably see it fall off a little bit. Not to take anything away from how well Wesley did, but a lot of people were thinking it was going to be a hull spam worlds, and then Wesley shows up with 200 idiots, and they're like, well, I las cannon 4 idiots. Fuck, now I lose. I think if it does become the best thing in the game, it will very quickly get knocked down a little bit. It's definitely a lot more extreme than Combined Regiment. Combined Regiment just kind of lifts everybody up a little bit, makes everyone good at their job. So if you are, maybe not thinking you can get max value out of those 45 amazing Scions, Combined Regiment's probably still better. I also think it's going to struggle a lot on open boards. So what I'm most famous for is I abuse the crap out of layout 5 in teams. I don't think this list can do that, and I think if it does end up on one of those layout 5, layout 4 style really open GW boards, you're going to struggle a lot when you can't hide infantry behind walls when they're just popping around seeing you wiping out full squads for free. So unlike WCW, on the more closed GW, this seems incredibly good, both for teams and singles. It might struggle in singles if it starts ending up on open boards and people are planning for it. Because if somebody wants to kill 200 bodies, I think they can. It's just that currently no one really wants to kill 200 bodies.
Fair. Quick thoughts on teams. Do you take this over Combined Regiment in a teams environment? Go ahead.
Could I just quickly go on that question because I've got like 1-2 minutes before I've got to be on duty. With teams, I think with mass signs especially, this list works better on teams than it does on individual because on WTC I'm talking about, because there's those very particular maps, there's the bell, where you've got 2 giant L's in the middle that are like parallel with your deployment and then 2 crates on either side. You know the types of maps I'm talking about? Right, those maps, it is so hard to get enough shots on to anything that's on the center objective. So if you can avoid those maps, you're golden. Because those are the only maps that mass Scion lists really struggle with. But when they do see those maps, they really struggle. Because you've got to basically just give up that middle objective until you've weakened the enemy enough that you can pile in with more stuff, right? So you've got to go for the side ones there, which takes away a lot of your can't think of the word for it, but your ability to make decisions. Yeah,
fair.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So
with that,
like being able to avoid those maps is big.
Yeah, well, with that, sorry we don't get the last part of Nemo's hot take, but I want to make sure we're respectful of Clifton's time here and get the outro so I don't have to do any editing at the end. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. Nemo, David, Clifton, we got to hear some of the best players around the world talking about this new Scion detachment with all the crazy side stuff that's going on. I've been Joshua Joshi Howard, joined by some wonderful people, and we'll see you guys all next time. Thank you guys so much for watching.